Hello, boys and girls. I hope you all had a great first day yesterday. I know that many of you messaged me and said that you really enjoyed the story yesterday, so I thought I would do another one today. And this story is actually a super special one. This story is called The Teeny Tiny Teacher, and this is definitely a tongue twister. But the reason that this is special is, can you see that little name on the inside there? It's kind of hard to read, but do you see that name there? That actually is me. It says Kristen, which is my first name, and I did that when I was probably your age. I was trying to write my name fancy, and so that's why it's really hard to read. But this is actually a book that used to belong to Miss Lidke when I was your age, and I've kept it all this time because it was one of my favorite books that my mom used to read to me, and so now I want to read it to you. This story is called The Teeny Tiny Teacher, and it is written by Stephanie Calmenson, and the pictures are by Dennis Roche. Here we go. It's a little bit of a tongue twister, so hang tight. Once upon a time, there was a teeny tiny teacher who taught in a teeny tiny school in a teeny tiny town. Now, I love this story because if you look closely, you can see that this teeny tiny town is made out of things that are really little. So like the house, this roof is made out of a book held up by pencils, and there's an eraser. These are Scrabble tiles. Here's a spool of thread and a card. So you can see that it's made out of things that are small. Look at how big those flowers are. So that's how small it is. One teeny tiny morning, after taking the teeny tiny attendance and singing teeny tiny morning songs, the teeny tiny teacher said, "Who would like to take a teeny tiny walk?" "Me!" called all the teeny tiny students in their teeny tiny voices. The teeny tiny students put on their teeny tiny coats and their teeny tiny hats, and they made two teeny tiny lines, holding teeny tiny hands as they walked to a teeny tiny park. So again, you can see how small they are because look at them compared to that bird. And at the teeny tiny park, they found many teeny tiny things, like teeny tiny leaves and teeny tiny sticks and teeny tiny rocks and teeny tiny feathers. And the teeny tiny teacher found a teeny tiny bone. "I will save this teeny tiny bone for our teeny tiny science lesson," said the teeny tiny teacher to her teeny tiny self. She put the teeny tiny bone in her teeny tiny pocket. And when the teeny tiny class got back to their teeny tiny room, they hung their teeny tiny coats and their teeny tiny hats in the teeny tiny closet. The teeny tiny teacher forgot all about the teeny tiny bone in her teeny tiny pocket. "Who is ready for a teeny tiny snack?" asked the teeny tiny teacher. "We are!" said the teeny tiny students. And while the teeny tiny teacher was filling teeny tiny cups with juice, a teeny tiny voice whispered, "Give me my bone." Uh-oh. The teeny tiny teacher smiled, thinking a teeny tiny student was playing a teeny tiny trick on her. "Someone is being a teeny tiny bit silly," said the teeny tiny teacher, and then she handed out the teeny tiny cups of juice and passed around teeny tiny cookies. The teeny tiny students were all enjoying their teeny tiny snack when the teeny tiny voice said a teeny tiny bit louder, "Give me my bone." The teeny tiny students were a teeny tiny bit frightened. Frightened is a word that means scared. They spilled their teeny tiny cups of juice and dropped their teeny tiny cookies all over the teeny tiny floor. "Someone is being more than a teeny tiny bit silly now," said the teeny tiny teacher, with her teeny tiny hands on her teeny tiny hips. Teeny tiny students who have something to say must raise their teeny tiny hands. A teeny tiny student raised her teeny tiny hand and said, "The teeny tiny voice came from our teeny tiny closet," said the teeny tiny, "Teeny tiny closets do not talk," said the teeny tiny teacher, and then she helped her teeny tiny students clean up their teeny tiny room. Who do you think that voice could be? If it's not one of the students, who might be saying that? When the teeny tiny room was a teeny tiny bit tidy, the teeny tiny teacher said, "Who would like to help me write a teeny tiny story about our teeny tiny walk?" "Me," said all the teeny tiny students. They were taking turns telling the teeny tiny teacher what to write when the teeny tiny closet started to shake and rattle, and the teeny tiny voice called out a teeny tiny bit louder, "Give me my bone." Uh-oh. So now the closet is rattling and shaking, but who could be talking? Now all the teeny tiny students and their teeny tiny teacher were a teeny tiny bit frightened. They hid under their teeny tiny desks. They had been hiding just a teeny tiny time when the teeny tiny voice called out a teeny tiny bit louder than before, "Give me my bone." Uh-oh. This made the teeny tiny teacher and her teeny tiny students a teeny tiny bit more frightened, so they hid a teeny tiny bit further under their teeny tiny desks. They were shivering and shaking a teeny tiny bit when the teeny tiny voice called out again a teeny tiny bit louder, "Give me my bone." Uh-oh, somebody is not happy. The teeny tiny voice was not about to let a teeny tiny voice frighten her, so her teeny tiny students another teeny tiny minute. So she popped up from under her teeny tiny desk and she shouted in her loudest teeny tiny voice, "Take it!" Look in that closet. Do you see who's peeking out? Do you think that maybe is who's yelling for their bone? And after that, the teeny tiny teacher and her teeny tiny students never heard from the teeny tiny voice again. Did you see who was talking? There he is. It looks like it was a ghost who wanted his bone. And that is the teeny tiny end. You can see the ghost wanted his bone to play fetch with his dog. That's pretty silly, huh? The end. Boys and girls, I hope you enjoyed that story as much as I enjoyed reading it to you. I know my tongue is all tied up and I definitely need a drink of water after all of that. There was so many teeny tinies throughout the story. But, like I said, this is one of my favorite ones growing up, so I knew it was one that I had to share with you as well. I hope you had an amazing, amazing second day of school, and I'll see you all soon.